that you can see my slides. Is that right?
I certainly can. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, well,
thanks so much.
No worries. Hi everybody. As you've heard, my name is Claire Churchill. I'm the Outreach Manager at the University of Birmingham, and it's my pleasure to speak to you this evening and to give you a little bit of an overview of what to expect when you're supporting son, daughter, or a young person that you care for with the university process. I've been asked to talk about different things. So this slide just gives you an overview of what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to cover a little bit about why students might want to go to university, and then think about what and where to study and how young people might think about choosing those, making those important choices. I'm going to briefly talk about the UCAS process and about how you as parents and carers can support decisions around university and help with the decision-making process. And finally, I'm going to touch on student finance. So obviously quite a lot to cover, so it really is going to be a whistle-stop tour, but obviously we can answer some questions at the end, or if anybody wants to get in contact with my team at the University of Birmingham following this presentation for help with anything in particular, then that's fine as well. So without further ado, I'll just move on to the first part of my talk, which is going to be about why go to university. And there's loads of reasons why a young person might want to go to university, and this slide hopefully covers a lot of them. So, for instance, it's an opportunity to study a subject that they love in more detail over 3 or 4 years, and obviously going into far more detail than you'd be able to get in a school or in a college. Going to university can also help improve career prospects, and many graduates can expect to earn have higher salaries over their lifetime than people that don't go to university. University also allows young people to develop transferable skills, which can support them in their career, but also in a whole range of other ways throughout their lives. Going to university at the age of 18 or older is also a great chance to gain independence, to move away often from home, or to go to a more local university but still strike out and make new friends and do different things. And also university is a chance to have new and exciting experiences that perhaps wouldn't be available to a young person were they to move into employment at the age of 18. So I'm just going to talk about these things in a little bit more detail. So the first is that obviously for some jobs, some professions, you do definitely need to have a degree. So if you're the parent or carer of a young person who wants to be a doctor, an architect, a social worker, a nurse, a lawyer, etc., then these are jobs that you definitely do need to have a degree for. So unfortunately, there's no two ways around it. If you want to do one of those jobs on the screen or a number of other jobs where a degree is a requirement, then you will need to go to university. However, it's worth noting that whilst some professions require certain degree subjects, so for instance, if you want to be a doctor in the UK, you need to have a degree in medicine. Around 70% of graduate jobs are open to graduates of any subject. So for instance, if a young person in your life is interested in roles in business, accountancy, investment banking, marketing, teaching, consultancy, the civil service, etc., then there's actually not any particular degree subject that they need to study. So for instance, to be an accountant, you don't necessarily need to study an accountancy degree. So about 70% of graduate jobs are open to graduates in a whole range of degree subjects. And that means that going to university and actually studying any degree that the young person is interested in and passionate about, can lead to a really rewarding professional level job at the end of the day. So that's really worth bearing in mind. There's also evidence that graduates over their lifetime tend to earn more than non-graduates, and this is obviously averages. There are obviously instances where people who don't go to university earn loads of money, and where people that do go to university don't earn so much, but these are sort of median salaries. So the light blue line at the bottom is non-graduates, so people that haven't been to university, and the darker blue line, the one in the middle, is graduates, so people with an undergraduate degree, that's the first degree, and the darker blue line at the top is postgraduate, so people who've got a master's degree or a postgraduate degree on top of an undergraduate degree. And you can see that in 2018, so the most recent year that there's data for on this slide, graduates earned around £10,000 more than non-graduates, which is very encouraging for all the people that go to university. And also this slide shows that graduates are more likely to be in employment than non-graduates. So the postgraduates and the graduates had an employment rate of around 87% compared to 71.6% for non-graduates. So this is for students who study a whole range of degrees and have a whole range of different degrees. It does suggest that there are benefits for going to university in terms of employment and salary expectation. But obviously university is so much more than this. So university helps students develop transferable skills. So the way that university is taught and assessed means that young people get to develop skills in problem solving, communication, teamwork, time management, a whole range of different things that you can see on the board. And this often helps to make them more successful in the job market, helps them develop their skills, which are going to be useful in their career, throughout their career, and also in other aspects of their life as well. So there are other benefits of going to university. And moving on, university offers a range of benefits and opportunities that possibly wouldn't be available to a young person were they to enter employment at the age of 18. So for instance, many degrees at the University of Birmingham and other providers offer the students a chance to study abroad, so spend a whole year in a foreign country, either working or studying. And we also offer placement years, so years where students can spend a year employed by a company, earning a salary, getting to experience what it's like to work in that sector, which can help to improve employment prospects after graduation. University is also a great time to get involved in clubs and societies, whether that's to do with sports or arts or theatre or anything like that. And graduates often develop a wide social network, so they'll meet people from all over the country, all over the world, and this helps develop their social skills and gives them a sort of broader social outlook. There's also opportunities at university for field trips, and depending on the degree a young person studies, language learning, opportunities to get involved in a whole range of different things. So university is something that really broadens a young person's life and gives them so many different opportunities that might not have been available to them before. So hopefully that's touched on some of the sort of key reasons why a young person might be considering going to university. And often once they've made that decision, the next thing that they need to think about is choosing what they want to study and where they want to study. So two really important things that they need to consider. So I'm going to go through some sort of factors and things that can help in that process now. So when thinking about what to study, there are a whole range of different things to take into account. I would say the most important thing is to think about studying a subject that they love. They're going to be studying this subject often on its own as a single honours degree for 3 or 4 years. So it really needs to be a subject that they're interested in, passionate about, are going to enjoy studying. There might also be subjects that they need to study for their dream job or career, and that's obviously important to bear that in mind. And they might want to study a subject that they're already studying and that they know they're good at, and they want to develop their skills in that area. Or they might have a subject that they want to take up from scratch, something that's a new subject offered at university, or a subject that they haven't been able to study before at school or at college, and they're really passionate about that area. They want to explore it. They know that it leads to great careers and things like that. So there's a whole different range of reasons to think about when trying to choose what you want to study at university. I've listed a few other things here which hopefully will help in the sort of choosing process. So if you've sort of narrowed it down to maybe you want to study a history degree, then you obviously need to choose a particular history degree at a particular university. And how do you do that? Well, some of the things that I would think about are listed here on the screen. I might think about what modules will I study in that degree. So for instance, if your young person is really passionate about 20th century history and they're really interested in all of the sort of world wars and things like that, then they obviously want to go to university where they can develop that knowledge. Some universities will offer history degrees that focus on that area, but other universities might offer history degrees that focus on medieval history or ancient history. And it would be really disappointing for a young person to end up at a university paying all those fees to study a course that they're not really interested in. So do look on the websites, look at course listings, and try and find out as much detail as you can about the modules that are on offer, and then whether they're of interest to the young person. You might also want to think about how the course is going to be assessed. Quite often the courses will be assessed by a mixture of examinations and coursework, but different universities and different courses will have a different balance. And if you know, for instance, or the young person knows that they're much better at exams than coursework, or vice versa, you can try and find a degree that suits their learning and assessment styles. You'll also want to think about how much teaching time you'll get. Do you want to go to a university and study a degree where you're going to be required in lectures and seminars for a high number of hours a week? Or would you prefer to work independently where you get less teaching time and you're working on your own to get through the course material? Where will you be taught? So some universities have multiple different campuses, so it's worth thinking about which campus you'll be at, or whether you'll be taught in lecture theatres or in seminars, or whether there'll be opportunities to study abroad, all of those different sorts of things. A key question as well will be, what are the entry requirements, and do I have the grades to allow me to enter that university? So all of the universities that you're interested in should list their entry requirements on the website, with details of what subjects are required as well. So do look carefully at these, because every year some students end up applying for courses where they haven't got the right either predicted grades or the right subjects, and this can sort of limit the success of their UCAS applications. You might want to think about whether there's any need to do any additional testing or interviewing, and I'm sure the college can support if that is the case. You might want to think about whether there's any work experience required for that particular course, and whether you've got that, so whether that's going to be a barrier, and if you do need work experience, to think about that now. And then what other opportunities are there available? So is this a course that's going to allow me to study abroad? Is this a course that's going to allow me to learn a language alongside my degree? All of those different things are going to be really important when making a decision. So you might have chosen what to study, but you'll also need to think about where to study. So this slide shows the higher education institutions in the UK. There are over 160 universities, so they're institutions that can award degrees in their own right. But then there are many hundreds of further and higher education colleges as well that you can go to and get a degree. So there's a range of different questions that you might want to think about when helping somebody choose where to study, and I'm just listed a few of them there. So for instance, do they want to stay close to home or go to a university that's far away? Do they want to go to a university where they're going to be in a city and in the hustle and bustle? Or do they want to be on a remote campus somewhere where everything's sort of very much focused on the university? Or perhaps even somewhere a little bit like the University of Birmingham, which is a campus, but obviously within a city. Do they want to go to an older university or a newer, more established one? They might want to think about where the university is positioned in the league tables, or whether the university is in the Russell Group, which means it's a leading research intensive university. And if they've got particular interests, thinking about whether the university can cater for those. So if they're into swimming, has the university got a swimming pool? If they're into football, is there opportunities to do football at university? And the main thing, and we will come back to open days, is what sort of feel did I get when I visited there? Can I imagine myself living and studying at that university for 3, 4, 5 years? So there's a range of different materials that you can access to support the decision-making process. So the first thing is there are websites such as the Complete University Guide, which publishes league tables. The Guardian University also publishes league tables, and there are other league tables out there. These are really good starting points for maybe helping you make a short list of universities that you might want to visit or find out more about. Obviously, do take them with a pinch of salt. League tables can often vary widely year on year. So a university that ranks very highly one year could be less highly ranked the next year, and vice versa. So, you know, don't sort of take them as they are, take them with a pinch of salt, but they can be really useful in helping you whittle down a shortlist or get an indication of where might be a really good place to study a particular subject, because you can also get subject level league tables as well as overall university league tables. You can also look at individual university websites. So this is obviously a screenshot of the University of Birmingham website. So you can go on university websites to give you a feel for what the research is like there, what the teaching is like there, what they're saying about the student life. And universities like the University of Birmingham here, you can see on the screen, we've got specific resources on our website for supporting Year 13 students in writing personal statements and developing their academic skills. And these can be really useful as well, just in the general university decision-making process. There's also social media nowadays, so most universities, if not all, will have an Instagram account, and that's Birmingham's there, or a Facebook account, and you can use these to get a feel for the institution. What are they posting on social media? What are they saying? What headlines are they coming out with? How much engagement do they get from students? Again, you have to take things on social media with a pinch of salt, but it can give you a really good insight into whether you can imagine yourself living and studying at that university. You know, does it seem like the sort of place that you want to be in it and spending your time? UCAS is obviously a great resource. So this is again a screenshot from the University of Birmingham section on the UCAS website. So all universities that offer degree programs in the UK have a UCAS page, which goes through all of the different degree courses that we offer, and will give you an insight into the university, the entry requirements, all of the different courses, all of those different sorts of things as well. So do take a look on UCAS. It is really useful for giving you an insight. And there are also other resources as well, like the Student Room, which you might have heard of. It's generally a site with lots of articles, and it also has forums where students can chat to each other and ask questions. Again, I would say take anything you see on the Student Room with a pinch of salt and verify everything with the sort of central university websites. But it can be a really good place to find out a little bit more information about some other things at university, like the accommodation or the clubs and societies that perhaps it's a little bit harder to find out the information on the main sort of web pages or the main social media accounts. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of where you can go initially to find out information. So moving on to the UCAS process. So if you want to apply to a university in the UK, you apply via UCAS. So UCAS is sort of like a clearing house. So students apply via UCAS. UCAS sends the applications on to the universities that they've applied for. The universities make the decisions, send them back to UCAS, and those decisions are communicated with the students. So they're a way of universities and students communicating with each other. All of the applications, as I've mentioned, are made through UCAS, and this is just a very quick overview of the UCAS process. So applications each year open in early September, and students submit their application online via the UCAS website, and I'm sure you can get lots more information via the college about exactly how that happens and how that works. There are two key deadlines though. So if a young person is interested in applying for a degree at Oxford or Cambridge, or if they're interested in applying for a degree in medicine, dentistry or veterinary science, then they need to send their UCAS application by the 15th of October. And for all other courses, the deadline for next year is going to be the 25th of January, so you have quite a bit longer. Obviously, your own college will have its own internal deadlines, and you need to make sure that you adhere to those, because obviously teachers need to write references and things like that. So you might not be able to apply right on the deadline and still expect your college to support the application, but obviously they can explain that to you in more detail. As I've mentioned, you send your application to UCAS and then it gets sent on to the individual universities that you apply for, and they'll respond with a decision on your application. And universities tend to reply quite quickly, but sometimes students do have to wait a while to receive their response back from a university. And once they have received all of their decisions back, then they need to select two things. They need to select a firm choice, which is the top university that they want to go to, their firm choice, their top choice. And they also select an insurance choice, which is a university. Often makes sense to have a university that is asking for lower entry grades. And this is a university that you would go to, hopefully, if you narrowly missed out and couldn't go into your firm choice because you didn't quite get the grades, then often students would go to the insurance choice. So it does still need to be a place that you would be happy to go to and spend your time studying there. Got a few facts now about the UCAS process. So students can apply for up to 5 different choices, as they don't need to apply to 5, but many students do. And that is 5 different choices. So that could be 5 different degree courses at the University of Birmingham, for instance, or that could be 5 different courses at 5 different universities. So it's up to the students how they use those choices. Universities will reply to students in one of 3 ways. So the first way they could reply is by giving an unconditional offer. Now, these are now very rare, and they're generally given out to students who have already fulfilled the terms of their offer. So if you're applying after you've taken a gap year and you've already got your A-level or your BTEC results, you may get an unconditional offer because the university knows that you've already met their entry requirements. What's more common is to get a conditional offer, and that's where the university will say, we'll offer you a place, but that place is subject or on the condition that you get certain grades in your A-levels or your BTECs or any other exams that you're taking. And that's what's called a conditional offer. And then finally, sadly, unfortunately, universities can also reject the applications if, for instance, the student doesn't have the right predicted grades, they're not studying the right range of courses, or for instance, their personal statement wasn't strong enough, or perhaps they didn't perform well enough in an interview if that's required. So students can get rejected by universities as well. And then, as I've mentioned, the student will get to make a decision on the offers that they have. So obviously they can have up to 5 offers because they can have made up to 5 choices, and they'll need to select one as their firm place and another as their insurance place. They don't actually need to select an insurance place if they don't want to, but it is obviously good practice because if, for instance, you missed out on going to your firm place, if you don't have an insurance place, then it will mean that you haven't been placed at university that year. All the other choices the student will obviously have to decline. So you need to think really carefully about what you're going to put as your firm and insurance choice. Think about it sensibly as well. It doesn't really make sense to have an insurance choice which has got higher grade requirements than the firm choice for lots of different reasons. And again, I'm sure the college can help inform you if you're struggling with that process later on down the line. And then finally, conditional places. So if you got a conditional offer and you selected it as your firm choice, they're typically confirmed on A-level results day in August, or whenever you get the results for the qualifications that you need. So for instance, if it's BTECs, it might be a bit before that. If your offer is also conditional on a certain GCSE result, you'll need to wait till GCSE results day, which is after A-level results day, to get your place confirmed. But generally places are confirmed in August when the results are released. So just some hints and tips here. Again, just there's lots more I could say, but these are some sort of main hints and tips. Follow the deadlines set by your school or college. That's really important. UCAS has its overall deadlines, but the school or college might be working to internal deadlines to ensure that they can support students through the process. So make sure the young people are aware of what those deadlines are. And I would say, as far as possible, it's better to apply early. And that's obviously, you don't want to rush the application and get it in and it not be very good. But as soon as the young person is ready to submit a strong application, we would recommend that they do. That's for a number of different reasons. Universities can start making offers as soon as the first applications are received in September, and lots of students who apply early find that they do get offers for courses early, which can be really encouraging and motivating when they're doing their A-level or other studies. And also, applying to UCAS is hard. Obviously, students need to think about the universities they're going to, write the personal statement, fill in the form. Once you've applied through UCAS, that's all done and dusted, and students can then focus on their A-levels and other studies rather than always be going back to and tweaking their personal statement. So I do think there are benefits for applying as early as you can. Make sure the young person has all the information ready, so they'll need details of their school, the school they did their GCSEs in, as well as their college, what qualifications, exam boards, all of those different things. So don't be rushing around at the last minute trying to get that information to hand. And do make sure that young people are applying via UCAS with an email address that they can access, which they know the password for, and which is going to be kept up to date. So make sure it's sort of their main email address that they're using. As I've mentioned, obviously things like the personal statement can take quite a lot of time. We would recommend that their students start those as early as possible so that they can be tweaked and refined and they're not rushing to do them at the very last moment. Again, you can decide on up to 5 choices. You don't have to use them all, but it takes a bit of time to make sure they start their research early. Inquire about who and how the fee is paid. It's a small fee to apply through UCAS, and the college might be able to support people if there's an issue with paying the fee. Every year, some applications in UCAS get held up because there are questions about the residency status for the student. Obviously, people from all over the world can apply through UCAS, and universities have to decide whether the person is classified as a home student or an international student. And for most people that's very straightforward, but for some students who maybe weren't born in the UK or have lived for a certain period of time abroad, that means that they need to provide additional documentation to prove their residency status. And make sure if you think that might apply to you or the young person that you're supporting, that you get your application in soon and that you've got the information ready to support the residency status. And also be prepared to share relevant personal information that might help the application. So often that means just telling teachers or the person writing the reference of any extenuating circumstances or any barriers that the young person's faced, and they can try and incorporate those in the reference if they think those are going to be useful. It's always good to have as much information as possible. So if there's reasons why the GCSE grades were perhaps lower than expected or anything like that, make sure it's included in the reference, and then universities have got the full picture when they're going to be making decisions on an individual application that they receive. There are loads more hints and tips on the UCAS website itself. So this again is just a screenshot of what I saw when I was looking at the UCAS website earlier. So there are tips on UCAS about how to write the personal statement, how to get a reference, all of those different things, how to fill in the application. So again, if you're not sure, have a look at the UCAS website or speak to people in the college because they'll be able to support you. So how can parents and carers support in the decision-making process? So I've already mentioned things about like doing the research and looking at resources online, but you can also help practically by supporting young people in visiting the universities and colleges that they're interested in. And universities and colleges run open days, which you might have heard of, which is where members of the public are welcome to come onto the campus to learn more about living and studying at the university. You often have to book open days in advance, and this is how you book them at the University of Birmingham. So you go onto the website, it will have all the open days listed. So for instance, we've got 2 open days coming up this weekend on Friday and Saturday, another in September, October and November. So do make sure you do your research and find out which universities you want to go to and what days they're running their open days. And obviously there's only a limited number of sort of days that open days can take place on. So sometimes 2 universities might be having their open day on the same day. So you will need to do some planning. So the sort of top tips I would say for attending open days and supporting young people in attending open days would be to book onto events early. Some universities will have limited capacity at their open days, so you will need to book places early, and some of them might even ask you book and places on talks. And so some talks for very popular degree subjects might book out early, so you do need to book events as early as you can. And also plan your travel arrangements. So how are you going to get there? Are you going to get public transport? Are you going to drive? Do you know where to park? Do you know how to get the train there? All of those different things just makes for a less stressful and a more enjoyable day. Make a plan for the day. So universities like the University of Birmingham are big sites. There's a lot going on. There might be lots of things that you want to do. So think about how you're going to get the most out of the day. I would think really carefully about who is going to attend the open day. So it would be really nice for if like mum, dad, younger brothers and sisters, nan, granddad, all of those people came. But in reality, it's going to be a little bit distracting. It's going to be a lot of things to think about. It's often best if just a young person and one adult or one supporter goes with them, maybe two, so that they can really focus on that young person. They're not having to worry about, you know, other people's needs on the day. And we know that this isn't always possible though, but that just think about maybe if you are having to take young people with you to open days, maybe as other people can sit with them outside, another family member, so that they're not having to be taken into all the talks as well, because for very young children the open days probably are a little bit boring. I would write a list of questions I had to ask before I went. So, you know, what do you want to find out? Are you really interested in the courses, the modules, the entry requirements, in the accommodation, all of those different things? And think about your priorities for the day. It possibly won't be, you won't be able to do absolutely everything at an open day, depending on the size of the university or the site that you're visiting. So is it your priority to hear about the subjects, or to view the accommodation, or to check out the different facilities? So think about that in advance and maybe put a little bit of a plan together about what you want to do on the day. I would definitely recommend that you chat to current students. So at the University of Birmingham, we have current students acting as ambassadors, and I'm sure all universities do that. They're the best people to talk to about the university, about what it's like to live and study there, what they get out of their degree, are they enjoying it? All of those different things. Definitely ask the students, because they are the people who are just a few years older than yourselves, and who are going to have made those decisions a few years before, and they'll be able to give you a real insight into what they're thinking. And finally, I would say definitely there is no such thing as a stupid question. There's not going to be anybody who thinks if you're asking a question that was a really silly question to ask. Everybody expects people at open days to not know that much about the courses, about the accommodation, about university in general. So don't leave with a burning question that you haven't had answered. Make sure that you do answer or have answered all of your questions and you get the most out of the day. So finally, I'm just going to quickly whiz through student finance, and I can't do it in loads of detail because we don't have lots of time, but I just want to give a disclaimer that what I'm going to talk about are the student finance arrangements as they are at the moment. There are changes for the 2023-24 academic year, but it hasn't been permanently or officially agreed by Parliament yet. So obviously do your own research into fees and finance and all of those sorts of things. But generally, there are two main costs for university. So the first is tuition fees, and that's what you pay to study at the university. They typically are at the higher end. Most universities charge the full amount. And then the other cost that students have is the maintenance costs. So they're the costs to go to university, really. So accommodation, travel, food, materials, books, all of those sorts of things. So there's two different costs and two different ways to pay those costs. So there is a loan available to cover the tuition fees, which will cover all of a student's tuition fees. This loan is paid directly to the university by the student's loan company, so the money doesn't come to the student at all. It's non-means tested and it's available to everybody, and it means that nothing for your tuition fees has to be paid up front. It's not compulsory though. Students can, if they want to, pay the full tuition fee or just part of it. So it's up to them if they want to take it and if so, how much they want to take. But it is available, and it does mean that you don't need to pay anything up front for tuition. The other loan is a maintenance loan, and this is what the student will get to help with their living costs, such as the rent and bills. It's means tested, so part of the loan depends on the household income, and students who have disabilities or students who have children or adult dependents will be able to get more of a loan. So this gives you an indication of what the loan entitlement will be for or was for students entering in 2021-22. Like I said, it's been refined slightly for the future years. So as you can see in the left-hand column, we've got household income. So if your household income is £25,000 or under, and the student chooses to live at home to go to university, then they'll be entitled to £7,987 a year. If they choose to move away from home and live elsewhere in the country, that rises to £9,488. And if they live in London, so obviously where the cost of living is highest in the country, then they'll be entitled to take £12,382. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the amounts that students are entitled to varies according to the household income. So that's something to bear in mind, and you can look on the government student finance website to see much more detail about this. So obviously loans do need to be repaid. So if you take a loan for your tuition fees and the maintenance costs, they will need to be repaid. And they're repaid generally the April after a student graduates, and they're linked to salary. So it comes out of your salary. Students make one repayment each month, and the employers deduct the repayments through PAYE, just like tax. So students don't need to physically pay any money. How much students pay depends on their annual income. And again, these figures might change for 2023 entry and beyond. But if students earn £27,295 or less, then they don't pay anything. So their student loan payments are frozen. They then are charged an amount. The higher they earn above that figure, the more they pay. So a student earning, say, £40,000 a year will pay £95 a month. So in that way, the payments are manageable because they're linked to the earning of the student. If a student doesn't have a job or goes travelling after university, so they aren't earning, or takes a career break, or at some point in the future maybe takes a break from maternity or anything like that, then if they're not earning money, then the repayments stop. So just some sort of facts and figures. So in 2023, the repayment threshold is likely to be £25,000. So you don't start paying your student loan back until you earn over that. There is interest rate added, and the loan will be written off after 40 years. If it's not repaid, it will be written off. So it's not something that hopefully would be sticking around when a student's in retirement or anything like that. So some more facts and figures. Again, I'll whiz through these. So tuition fee loans are paid directly to the institution. The maintenance loans are paid directly to the student. And you can get more information on the government website. But it's important that when the student starts an application, they have things to hand like their passport and the university that they're applying for and the course that they're applying for, national insurance details, UK bank details. All of those different things really help and speed up the application process. You also don't need to have a place at university confirmed to apply, so you can apply, or the student can apply when they're still in the application process, so before they've made that firm choice, and they just update the student finance details when they have made a firm choice. Just again, quickly skipping through this. So there are additional support sources of support available. So if students have a disability, or if they've got their own children, or if they're studying overseas, or they're doing certain NHS courses, they will be entitled to additional support, and you can find out more on the government website. And also, many universities offer bursaries and scholarships which are non-repayable. So that's money that's paid to the student to support them, and they don't need to repay it. So this is often based on things like academic achievement, whether for students who have perhaps a low household income, or for students who've taken part in certain programmes. So it's worth investigating whether the university that you're interested in offers any scholarships and bursaries that the young person might be able to claim. And obviously, household income means that parents need to support the student loan process, or the student finance application process. So make sure, again, that you've got to hand, as you're supporting your young person through this, things like your national insurance number, your household income information, and details of any other child dependents that you pay for in the house. You can find loads more information on student finance on these websites, and you can just Google it as well. And then just to finish off, I just want to talk a little bit, just for a few minutes, about the support that we offer at the University of Birmingham in accessing degree programmes. So we run a programme called Pathways to Birmingham to support students in Year 12 and in Year 13 in getting places at the University of Birmingham. And if you're in Year 12 now, you might be interested in applying to our Year 13 Access to Birmingham programme. We do ask students to meet certain eligibility criteria to take part, and we look at things like your home postcode, whether your parents have been to university, your household income, etc. So you don't need to meet all of those, you just need to meet some eligibility criteria. But if you do meet the criteria, then it means that you can receive an alternate offer, which is typically 2 grades below the standard offer for a course at Birmingham, and you'll be eligible to receive enhanced financial support as well, so scholarships and bursaries. So what I mean by reduced offer is, so for instance, if you say take our psychology course here, the standard offer is 3 A's. If you take part in one of our pathways programmes, such as A to B, that is reduced by 2 grades, so it goes down to ABB. And these are just examples on the board. All of the degree programmes at the University of Birmingham are part of Pathways to Birmingham, so you'll get at least a 2 grade reduction on all of our degree courses. And you'll also be eligible to up to £3,500 worth of study, pounds per year of study, sorry, and that's not a loan, that's one of the examples of a bursary or scholarship that's available to students, so you get additional funding. So we offer it because we hope that it gives students enhanced subject knowledge, develops their skills for university, helps with their confidence, interpersonal skills, all of those different things which are really important before they go to university. And the main thing of A to B, you've got a whole range of different activities there, but the main thing that students do is they come to a launch day, they do an academic assignment, and then they take part in an online module called Skills for Uni. The academic assignment is after the A-levels are all completed, students will be invited onto the University of Birmingham campus to attend a lecture in a subject related to the one they're applying for, and also attend a seminar based on that lecture led by one of our academic members of staff. And this gives a really good insight into university study, and then they'll complete a piece of reflective writing about the experience. And it all, as I've mentioned, happens after the A-level exams in sort of late June, early July. So we've been running this programme for sort of nearly over 20 years now, and we have a very high number of students entering the university via our Pathways to Birmingham programme. So last year, over 12% of all of our undergraduates came through our Pathways to Birmingham programmes. And as you can see here, the students on our programmes find them very beneficial. So they talk about their confidence soaring, they get to meet members of staff, other students, and they get to sort of prepare in a way for university, which really helps them to have a flying start for those first few weeks at university. Yeah, so as I mentioned, they need to obviously apply, and this college is one of our partners. We have a high number of students every year doing A to B and our other Pathways to Birmingham programmes, and take part in the programme, and then the student will be eligible for the benefits of A to B. But I think I've probably spoken for long enough now, so that brings me to the end of my very quick whistle-stop tour for parents and carers about university. And there's an email address on the screen there that you can use to contact me or any one of my colleagues if you've got any questions that perhaps I haven't answered today or I don't get a chance to answer later. And there's also our website. Yeah, I've really enjoyed speaking to you. I'll be very happy to answer any questions that come in now, and I hope you found that session useful and enjoyable. Thank you very much for giving up a Thursday night to listen to me, and very best of luck to everybody in the decision-making process and the university application process. I hope it all goes really well for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for a really concise set of whistle-stop tour of UCAS. Next week, our students have an extended PT session to start the UCAS process. So it's very, very relevant for our students. but also parents. There is the UCAS guide, and we will be putting that link on the Padlet which students use, and we will send that out via a link to that via the July newsletter. We also have an HE fair, which I know that UOB will be represented at on the 5th of October, where students will be able to kind of come along to any to stands where any universities that they haven't been able to go out and visit on open days will hopefully be attending. Claire, I wonder if you could, certainly parents can put questions in the chat, but in the meantime, I did have a couple of questions that were asked in advance. One of those was about the deadline for the early entries. If you could just focus on that for a few moments.
Yeah. So the early UCAS deadline is the 15th of October each year, and that's for students who are interested in applying to either Oxford or Cambridge, or for medicine, dentistry or veterinary sciences. If that's going to be one of your choices or all of your choices for those subjects or those two universities, you have to apply by the 15th of October at the very latest, but obviously bearing in mind that your college might have a slightly earlier decision. For all other universities and for all other programmes, you have until, I think I said, the 25th of January to apply. So you have quite a bit later.
That's great, thank you. And we do definitely have earlier deadlines, and those will be outlined to students next week during the UCAS week. Faye has been busy typing in the chat function links for parents on a variety of different things, including UOB, but student finance, and there's advice for parents and guardians, which is the UCAS guide. Yes, indeed, I know that somebody has asked about the presentation. We are recording this, and we will make that available for students and parents to access. If there are no further questions just in there, I've also got a question about applying with Year 12 grades. And in fact, we do predicted grades, but they've asked, do you have to apply with Year 12 grades, or can you apply to university with final grades? I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the sort of what can happen once students actually do have their grades.
Yeah, so most of the time students applying to university when they're in year 13, so they're applying to university before they've got their final grades. And so often universities are relying on predicted grades that the school or college provides to help them make a decision on whether this student is going to be the sort of student they want to make an offer to. And obviously they'll be looking for other things as well, for things like GCSE grades, the quality of the personal statement, what subjects the students study, and all of those different things. But universities do use predicted grades that are provided by the school or college to help us make decisions on who we should offer places to. So students who have who've applied with predicted grades will get that offer that I talked about, which is a conditional offer, which will say something like you can have a place to study at the University of Birmingham, but in order to have that place, you will need to achieve AAB in your A-level exams. And then when the student takes the A-level exams and hopefully gets the results that they want, that place is confirmed in August on A-level results day. And 99 times out of 100, it's a seamless process. The universities, so the exam boards, also communicate with UCAS directly, and the universities know in advance the A-level grades and other grades that students get. So more often than not, on the morning of results day, students find out that their place has been confirmed. If a student is applying after they've already taken their exam, so they're applying perhaps in the equivalent of what would be year 14, they've done their exams in last year in year 13, they've taken a gap year, then the university doesn't need to rely on predicted grades. They've got the actual grades that the student has, and in that case, that's when you're more likely, or you would get an unconditional offer, because hopefully you're applying for courses that you know that you've got the grades for, and if the university wants to make you an offer, they'll just say you've got a place here if you want to take it, because we already know, for instance, that you've got an A and 2 Bs in your A level, and those are our entry requirements.
That's really helpful. Thank you. We're getting a few questions through. One of those is about a gap year and taking a gap year. And whether or not that, how does the deferral process work as opposed to perhaps applying the following year? And also, does that harm a student's application in any way if they mention they're considering a gap year?
I would say for most courses and most universities that taking a gap year doesn't really harm your choices. There are some universities that prefer students to go straight on and worry a little bit about gaps in study, but I think they list that on their websites. If you'll probably come across them if you're doing careful research. But in many cases, doing a gap year can be very beneficial. And we know at the University of Birmingham that there's lots of reasons why students might want to do that. And one of which is because they perhaps need to work and earn money to help them afford university. So we wouldn't, typically say that taking a gap year, is prohibited at all. There are two different ways that you can take a gap year. The first way, I suppose, is to apply when you're in year 13 in the same way that everybody else is applying, but tick on the UCAS form that you want to defer. That's good in some ways because it means that during your gap year, you will hopefully already have your place at university confirmed. You don't need to spend any of your gap year applying for university. That's really useful if you're, for instance, wanting to go travelling when it wouldn't be that easy to start writing a personal statement halfway across the world. So lots of students do that, and then they know for their gap year that the next year they'll be going off to university and they can enjoy or they can focus on working. The other way to do a gap year is to not apply during year 13, just to focus on your exams and then apply in the next year when you've finished college with those achieved grades. Again, that has some benefits because you'll know the grades that you've got. You'll be able to think very carefully about the universities that you can go to because you'll know exactly what A-level grades or other grades you've got. But it does mean that you obviously have to go back to school or college, and I'm sure they would always support the application, but it's a bit more of a sort of a faff, I suppose, if you're working or something like that, that you need to remember to do your personal statement and all those sorts of things. So there are advantages and disadvantages of either way. And I would say in most cases, a university would be very happy to accept students on a gap year.
Thank you, that's very helpful. How do the grades required work if you're taking 4 A-levels, we're being asked?
So that's a good question. So all universities are entitled to set their own entry requirements, and most universities, not all, but most, base their entry requirements on 3 A-level grades or equivalent. So at the University of Birmingham, if you apply, your offer will be based on 3 A-levels. Therefore, if you're doing 4, in some ways that 4th subject isn't considered at all. It might be considered if you narrowly missed out on achieving your grades and you had say for example you were meant to get 2 A's and a B and instead you got 1 A and 3 B's. In cases where we had a small number of places available, perhaps doing a 4th A-level would be beneficial because you'd look like a stronger candidate perhaps than somebody who had done 3. But in the same way, maybe if you only did 3 A-levels, you would have had a better chance of getting 2 A's and a B, because obviously we know it's demanding to take on additional A-levels. But in most cases, yeah, that 4th A-level wouldn't be part of the offer and wouldn't be considered. And depending on what type of offer you got, sometimes it would name the subjects that you needed to get the certain grades in. And sometimes, so it might say 2 A's and a B in maths, chemistry and biology, or it might say just 2 A's and a B and then any of your A-level subjects would be fine. Other universities work on UCAS points, and each A-level grade has a certain number of points associated to it. So in that case, maybe doing 4 A-levels would mean that you've got a greater chance of getting a higher points tariff, but sometimes they say X number of points from 3 A-levels or something like that. So there are benefits in doing 4 A-levels, but I would think very carefully about whether it is worth it, because quite often it doesn't necessarily help your university application process, your chances. Obviously, we know there are other reasons why you might want to do it, because you love the subjects or you're not entirely sure what you want to study at university yet, so you're trying to keep your options open. But it's obviously very important to focus on getting 3 or the best grades you can in your A levels.
I think that's the advice that we would give as careers advisors as well, is that whilst there are some students who choose to do 4, and you know, we understand that, but in the main, it is better to get 3 very good grades than it is to get 4 where you might just compromise on that grade attainment at the end.
I think that's
I know that we're running out of time a little bit, but could you just explain a little bit about how clearing works if you don't get the grades that you want or you change your mind on your university? Faye's kindly put a clearing guide for parents and undergraduates in there, which is wonderful. Thank you, Faye. But if you could just explain a little bit, please, Claire.
Yeah, certainly. So if everything goes to plan, then students will apply to university, they'll get an offer, they'll select a firm choice, and on A-level results day in the summer, they'll find out that their place at university has been confirmed because they've met or exceeded the terms of that offer. And that's what obviously happens for a large number of students. However, for every year, there are some students who miss out on their firm and insurance choices because unfortunately, perhaps their grades are too low or they've missed out on the entry requirements. And therefore, if they want to still go to university that year, they can enter a process called clearing. So clearing is where universities make all of the courses which they still have available places on, sort of available for students to see. And on the UCAS website or individual university websites, or sometimes newspapers, I think maybe like the Telegraph or the Independent runs like a clearing guide, they'll often list in advance places or courses which might have places on during clearing. And then generally what happens is you find out on results day that you haven't got into your university, and then you can look for the places available in clearing to see whether there's another university that's offering the same course that you might be interested in. So, for instance, if you had applied to chemistry and you didn't get in at your firm or insurance choice, then you might be able to find other places that are offering chemistry degrees. It can be quite a stressful process. Often students who go through clearing end up in good places and they're happy in their universities, but it can be a stressful process, and this is why it's definitely encouraged that you're at home on A-level results day, that you're in the country, because we've always had students phoning up the University of Birmingham from abroad, and it's really stressful, and you know, things haven't worked out for them, and it's very difficult to do clearing from a beach or from your family's home in a different country. So it's much better to try and do it from home if you have to do it, and obviously you don't know that you need to do it until results day. But universities who go into clearing will still often offer things like open days over that weekend, so opportunities to go and visit, or you might be able to find a place in clearing at a university you did visit. Perhaps it was one of your 5 choices, it just wasn't perhaps the one that you picked as your firm choice. So you might be able to find universities that you have visited. But universities will do things like virtual tours and stuff like that to try and support students who are making the decisions during clearing. But we know it's a stressful time for students. Like I said, most students don't have to go through clearing, but if you do, be calm, don't be rushed into making a decision. Make sure that you think about what's important to you. So, you know, if it was really important to you to study history, try and hang on to that, because going to a different university to study philosophy is not going to be the same, and that's when students sometimes have to end up dropping out and stuff because it isn't quite what they expected. But yes, but there are also other alternatives that you can do to clearing. So you could perhaps, you know, retake an A-level the next year. So I would advise, you know, speak to somebody at your school or college, and they'll be able to give you the best advice. They know you the best. But lots of good universities do have places available during clearing every year.
That's really helpful, thank you, Claire. And we will be hand-holding students through all of these processes and endeavour to do that also with parents in a number of different ways. We'll be having student finance talks in the spring term, and we'll continue the links and information via the newsletters, parent mail, and by these recordings, which we will make available. Claire, it's been very, very helpful. I'm sure that parents, we hope, will have benefited from learning that. What I would say is that there is a lot of support via the careers team and by the personal tutors for each of the students. And we will be going through all of that process with a timeline as well, and all the details about clearing, etc., will be made clearer to students and parents in the future. The most important thing now is to concentrate perhaps on the research element for which subjects you want to study, attending open days in order to find out comparative courses and modules, and making the decisions about universities themselves. Perhaps there are other bits of information I think Faye's put in there about the Prospects website, and we also have access for parents and students to Unifrog, and they're all platforms where you can research at this stage subjects, universities, career pathways to make all of those decisions, and the rest will hopefully will come into play as the process goes on. So next week students will be signing on to UCAS. And Claire, thank you very much indeed for your attendance this evening and for delivering that presentation. And parents, if you have any questions, or students, you can email careers@keds.ac.uk. As Faye, Jane and myself will be able to help you with those. And I'm sure Claire will be talking to you soon in the future.
Yeah, lovely to chat to everybody this evening. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for attending. Good night.